I was the last one in the office again. The silence that surrounded me was thick and oppressive, as if the building itself had been holding its breath for hours. The soft buzz of my computer's cooling fan was the only sound, and the glow from the screen was the last source of light in the otherwise dark space. The rows of empty cubicles stretched out before me, bathed in shadow. Everyone else had gone home hours ago, leaving me here alone. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake the fog of exhaustion that clung to my brain. My neck ached from hunching over the desk for so long. I glanced at the digital clock in the corner of my screen. 2:37 and way later than I planned to stay. I sighed heavily, pushing back from my desk and stretching my arms above my head, feeling the tension in my muscles as they protested. I needed to get out of here. I had been staring at that screen for so long, the lines of code felt like they were etched into my retinas. My stomach grumbled, reminding me that I'd skipped dinner hours ago, too caught up in finishing this project. The office around me was unnervingly quiet. The occasional distant rumble of the city was muted, as if it existed far away in another world. The building was completely still. It was always like this at night, peaceful, but unsettling in its emptiness. I'd worked late plenty of times before, but tonight felt different. There was something about the silence that was off. It wasn't the usual quiet that accompanied late night work. It was deeper, heavier, almost suffocating. I grabbed my bag and shut down my computer, listening to the whir of the hard drive as it powered off. Just as I stood up to leave, something caught my eye, an odd flicker at the end of the hallway. It wasn't much at first, just a faint sliver of light spilling out from a room at the far end of the office. A door was slightly ajar, the narrow gap revealing a flickering fluorescent light inside. I paused, staring down the long hallway. I didn't remember that light being on earlier. In fact, I couldn't even remember ever seeing that room used. It had always just been there, at the far end of the hall, tucked away like an afterthought. Something about it felt wrong. I blinked, shaking off the sudden, inexplicable unease that had settled over me. It was probably just a mistake, someone from the cleaning crew leaving the light on. Maybe they hadn't closed the door all the way, but the cleaning crew usually finished hours ago. By now, the entire floor should have been locked up tight. I stood there for a moment, indecision gnawing at me. I could just leave. I could walk out the front door, head home, and forget all about that strange light. But I didn't. Something about the door being open, something about that light, it pulled me in, tugging at my curiosity. I sighed, slinging my bag over my shoulder and heading down the hallway toward the open door. My footsteps echoed softly on the tiled floor, louder than usual in the thick silence. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds, casting strange, disjointed shadows across the walls. As I walked, I found myself slowing down, my heart rate picking up slightly with each step. The light at the end of the hall grew brighter as I approached, the crack in the door widening as I got closer. The smell hit me before I even reached the room. It was faint at first, a metallic tang in the air that I couldn't quite place. But as I got closer, it grew stronger, thicker. The sickly, unmistakable scent of blood. I stopped in my tracks, my stomach turning. I stood there, staring at the door, feeling a knot of anxiety tighten in my chest. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to turn around, to leave this place and never look back. But something else, a morbid curiosity, a need to know, kept me rooted to the spot. I reached out with trembling fingers, pushing the door open just enough to peek inside. The room was small, smaller than I expected. The harsh fluorescent light flickered, casting everything in a pale, unnatural glow. The walls were cracked and stained, patches of mold creeping along the ceiling. The floor was old tile, chipped in places, with dark stains scattered across it. There was nothing in the room, nothing except for a single chair in the center. The chair was metal, rusted at the edges, the kind you'd find in a cheap classroom or a rundown office. But that wasn't what drew my attention. It was the stains on the floor around it, dark, dried stains that looked almost black in the dim light. My stomach churned again as the smell of blood grew stronger, more pungent, filling the air with its sickly scent. I took a step back, my mind reeling. There was no logical explanation for this. Who had left this here? And why? I wanted to leave, I needed to leave. But before I could turn around, the door behind me slammed shut. The sound echoed through the empty room like a gunshot, and I jumped, my heart racing. I spun around, grabbing the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. No matter how hard I twisted and pulled, it was stuck sealed shut. Panic surged through me. I yanked harder, slamming my shoulder into the door, but it didn't move. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I pounded on the wood, screaming for help. But the office was empty. No one was coming. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my back pressed against the door, my hands trembling. The air around me felt colder, now heavier, as if the room itself was closing in on me. I glanced back toward the chair, half expecting to see someone or something sitting in it. But the room was empty. That's when I heard a faint, wet sound coming from the far corner of the room. My heart stopped. I turned slowly, my body rigid with fear. In the corner, where the light didn't quite reach, I could just make out a shadow, no, a figure. It was barely visible at first, but as I stared, it began to move. The figure was hunched over, its limbs unnaturally long and thin, crawling slowly across the floor. The wet, slapping sound of its movements filled the room, echoing off the walls. My breath caught in my throat, my mind racing to make sense of what I was seeing. It dragged itself closer, its pale, translucent skin stretched tight over its bones, its movements jerky and unnatural. I wanted to move, to run, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. I was frozen in place, paralyzed by a fear that gripped me so tightly I could hardly breathe. The thing stopped in front of the chair, crouching low to the ground. I couldn't see its face, if it even had one. Its head hung low, its back arched like a grotesque animal, its limbs splayed out on the floor. For a moment, I thought it might stay there, unmoving. But then, slowly, it began to rise. Its limbs creaked and cracked as it stood, towering over the chair, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I could feel its gaze on me, even though I couldn't see its eyes.
It took a step toward me, its long, spindly arms reaching out, and that's when I finally snapped out of my paralysis.
I bolted for the door, slamming my fists against it, screaming for help. My mind was a blur, my heart pounding in my chest. But the door wouldn't open. It was as if it had been welded shut. The wet, dragging sound grew louder behind me, closer. I could feel the creature's presence, its cold breath on the back of my neck. I didn't want to turn around, but I could feel it right there. My body trembled, every muscle tensed as I fought the urge to collapse under the weight of my terror. Suddenly, I felt something cold and slimy wrap around my ankle. I screamed, kicking out instinctively, but it was too strong. The thing pulled me down, my knees hitting the hard tile with a sickening crack. Pain shot through my legs, but it was nothing compared to the terror that gripped me. I twisted around, trying to pull myself free, but the creature's grip tightened. Its fingers, long, bony, and ice-cold, dug into my skin, pulling me across the floor toward the chair. My hands scrambled for anything to hold onto, but there was nothing. It dragged me closer, inch by inch, until I was right in front of the chair. I could see the dark stains on the floor now, the dried pools of blood that surrounded the metal legs. My heart pounded in my chest, my mind racing with thoughts of how I could escape, but there was no way out. The creature loomed over me, its head tilting as if studying me. I could feel its breath, cold, damp, and putrid against my face. My vision blurred as tears filled my eyes. I was going to die here. It raised one long, bony hand, pointing toward the chair. "No," I whimpered, my voice barely audible. "Please." But it didn't care. It pulled me to my feet, its grip painfully tight, and forced me into the chair. My body collapsed into the cold metal, my mind numb with terror. The creature stood over me for a moment, watching, waiting. And then, slowly, it began to crawl away, disappearing back into the shadows from where it had come. The room was silent again. but the air was thick with the stench of decay. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't move. My body felt heavy, as if the chair itself was holding me in place. My vision grew dim, the room spinning around me. I could feel the darkness closing in, suffocating me. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the door still shut, still locked just out of reach. I don't know how long I've been here now. Hours, days, time doesn't seem to exist in this place. It's dark, so dark and cold and unbearable, bone-deep cold that never goes away. I can't see anything. I can't feel anything. But I'm not alone. I can hear them, the others. They're here too, trapped in the darkness. I can hear their whispers, faint and distant, calling out for help, for release. But no one's coming. No one ever comes. I try to remember who I was, but it's slipping away like a dream fading in the morning light. My memories are fading, and soon there will be nothing left of me. I'll be just another shadow in the darkness, another whisper among the countless others who were lost here before me. I don't know how long I've been here now. Hours, days. Time doesn't seem to exist in this place. It's dark, so dark and cold and unbearable, bone-deep cold that never goes away. I can't see anything. I can't feel anything. But I'm not alone. I can hear them, the others. They're here too, trapped in the darkness. I can hear their whispers, faint and distant, calling out for help, for release. But no one's coming. No one ever comes. I try to remember who I was, but it's slipping away like a dream fading in the morning light. My memories are fading, and soon there will be nothing left of me. I'll be just another shadow in the darkness, another whisper among the countless others who were lost here before me. Soon, I'll forget who I was. Soon, I'll become one of them. And then, I'll wait just like they do for the next poor soul to wander down the hall, curious about the light. The thought of losing myself completely, that final thread of identity, unraveling, sent a wave of panic through me. I wasn't ready to let go, wasn't ready to join the others, whatever they were. They seemed so distant now, just faint murmurs in the vast, consuming darkness, but I knew that if I gave in, I would become one of them. I would lose everything. The horror of that possibility was worse than anything I had experienced so far. No, I had to hold on. I had to find a way out. I don't know how, but I forced my body to move, even though it felt impossibly heavy, as if the darkness itself had weight pressing down on me. My legs were numb, unresponsive at first, but I managed to shift in the chair. The cold metal creaked beneath me, a sound that echoed strangely in the oppressive silence. It was hard to see, harder still to remember the layout of the room. The light had flickered out entirely at some point, and now the space around me was an abyss. I strained to focus, to make out any shape or form that could help orient me. But the darkness was total, impenetrable. And then, as if mocking me, the whispers started again. This time, they were closer. Not the distant murmurs I had been hearing for what felt like days, no. These were louder, clearer. They surrounded me, pressing in from all sides, overlapping voices that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Some were frantic, begging, while others were low and guttural, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Help, please, I can't breathe. A woman's voice, faint and strained, as if she were suffocating. Stay forever, stay with us. A chorus of voices, overlapping in a twisted harmony. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to block them out, but it was useless. The voices were inside my head, echoing in my mind. My heart raced, and a suffocating pressure built in my chest. I could feel them, those others, drawing closer, as if they could sense my fear, as if my panic was pulling them toward me. I stumbled out of the chair, my legs nearly buckling beneath me, but I managed to stay upright. I had to move, had to get out of this room, out of this darkness. The door. If I could just find the door. My hands fumbled through the blackness, searching for the wall, for any solid surface to guide me. My fingers brushed against cold, cracked plaster, and I followed it, inching my way along, feeling my way through the void. Every step felt agonizingly slow, Every second stretched into eternity. And all the while, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. Run, run, but you can't escape, a voice hissed, low and raspy. I fought back a scream, forcing myself to focus. I couldn't listen to them. I couldn't let them in. My fingers traced the contours of the wall, feeling the rough texture beneath my touch, until I felt something different. A seam, a break in the wall, the doorframe. Relief flooded through me, and I reached out, my hands finding the cold metal of the door handle. But when I tried to turn it, it wouldn't budge. The same as before, it was sealed tight, as if the room itself had locked me in. My pulse raced, and I pulled harder, yanking at the handle with all my strength, but it wouldn't move. No, 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 I cried out, panic rising in my throat like bile. The whispers were deafening now, a cacophony of voices swirling around me, filling my head with their madness. Then something touched me. It wasn't the cold, clammy grip of the creature from before. This was different. A light brush, barely there, like fingers skimming the back of my neck. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I turned around, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. There was nothing, just a darkness, thick and all-consuming, but I could feel it. Something or someone was there, watching me. I backed up against the door, my fingers still gripping the useless handle, as if somehow it could offer me protection. My eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of movement, but the blackness revealed nothing. My mind raced with thoughts of what could be lurking just beyond my sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then, a voice clearer than the rest, closer, spoke directly into my ear. It's too late. I screamed, a sound torn from the deepest part of me, raw and primal. My body acted on instinct, flinging itself away from the door, away from the voice, away from whatever was in the room with me. I stumbled through the darkness, disoriented, my hands outstretched in front of me as I tried to find my way. Suddenly, my foot struck something solid, and I fell, crashing to the ground. Pain shot through my knees and hands as they slammed into the cold tile floor. I lay there for a moment, gasping for breath, trying to gather my thoughts, but the fear was overwhelming, clouding my mind. I had to move. I had to get out. I pushed myself up onto my hands and knees, my breathing ragged and uneven. But as I did, I felt it again, the touch. This time, it was unmistakable. Cold fingers brushing against my skin, tracing the length of my spine, slow and deliberate. I jerked away, scrambling to my feet, my entire body trembling with terror. My vision swam, my pulse thundered in my ears, and I could barely think. All I could do was run blindly into the blackness, desperate to escape whatever was in that room with me. But the darkness was infinite, stretching out endlessly in all directions. No matter how far I ran, I couldn't find the walls. The door was gone. Everything was gone. The whispers were inside me now, burrowing deep into my mind, gnawing at my sanity. You'll never leave. Join us. Join us. Stay forever. I clamped my hands over my ears, trying to block them out, but it was no use. I could feel my grip on reality slipping, the world around me unraveling. Was I even in the room anymore? Or had I been pulled somewhere else, somewhere darker, somewhere worse? And then I heard it again. That wet, slapping sound. The same sound that had haunted me before, when the creature had crawled toward me. But this time, it was coming from all around me. I spun in circles, my heart racing, my breath coming in short, frantic gasps. The sound grew louder, closer, until it felt like it was right on top of me. I backed up, my hands outstretched, trying to keep whatever was out there at bay. Suddenly, something grabbed me from behind, yanking me backward with a force so strong it knocked the breath out of me. I hit the ground hard, my head slamming against the cold tile floor. Dazed and disoriented, I tried to scramble to my feet, but the grip on my ankle tightened, pulling me toward the darkness. No, I screamed, clawing at the floor, my nails scraping against the tile. But it was useless. The thing, whatever it was too strong. I was dragged across the floor, my body slamming against the hard surface, pain shooting through my limbs. I kicked out wildly, trying to free myself, but the grip on my ankle only tightened, cold and unyielding. I was pulled through the darkness, deeper and deeper, until the whispers became a deafening roar, filling my head with their madness. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, it stopped. The grip on my ankle released, and I lay there, gasping for breath, my body trembling with fear and exhaustion. The room was silent again, the oppressive stillness pressing down on me like a weight. I lay there for what felt like hours, too afraid to move, too afraid to even breathe. My mind raced with thoughts of what had just happened, but I couldn't make sense of it. Nothing made sense anymore. Finally, I forced myself to sit up, my body aching from the ordeal. I looked around, but there was nothing, just the same impenetrable darkness. But I knew I wasn't alone. I could feel them. The others. They were still there, watching, waiting. And then, from the darkness, a voice clear and unmistakable spoke. "You're one of us now." I froze, my heart skipping a beat. The voice was different from the others. It wasn't a whisper, but a statement. A cold, hard fact. I shook my head, my throat dry. No, I'm not. But the voice didn't respond. It didn't need to. The truth was already sinking in, settling deep into my bones. I was trapped here, forever. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, and I collapsed back onto the floor, tears streaming down my face. There was no escape. There never had been. I had been doomed the moment I walked into that room, the moment I saw the light spilling out from the doorway. I was one of them now, one of the countless souls lost to the darkness. I could feel it already, my memories slipping away, my thoughts growing hazy. Soon, I wouldn't even remember who I was. I would become just another whisper in the void, calling out for help that would never come. And then I would wait for the next poor soul to wander into the room, wait for them to see the light. And then I would watch